My dad, Arthur, was a man built of oak and integrity, a retired civil engineer who believed in blueprints, stress tolerances, and the unwavering logic of the physical world. For 72 years, he had navigated life with a quiet confidence that was as much a part of him as his calloused hands and the scent of sawdust that clung to his flannel shirts. Before we dive into this difficult story, if you're finding our content helpful, please consider subscribing to the Elder Scam Stories channel to help us raise awareness. This is the story of how that confidence was systematically dismantled, not by a catastrophic failure of a bridge he designed, but by the insidious, invisible architecture of two modern scams, all within the span of a single, brutal year. The first crack in his foundation appeared on a Tuesday in March. It was a day like any other. He was in his study, a room that was more of a personal museum than an office. Books on structural engineering lined the walls, and framed photos of my late mother, Helen, sat on his desk, her smile a constant, silent companion. He was trying to upload photos from his new digital camera to his computer, a task that always filled him with a low-grade anxiety. He was from a generation of slide carousels and photo albums, and the digital ether felt flimsy and untrustworthy. To him, that's when it happened. A pop-up window, loud and garish, filled his screen. Red letters flashed menacingly. Warning, your computer has been infected with the Zeus virus. Your personal data, banking information, and photos are being stolen. Do not shut down. Call Microsoft support immediately at 1-800-XXXXXX. Panic, cold, and absolute seized him. The message was engineered for this exact reaction. It didn't just threaten his computer. It threatened his memories, his connection to my mother, his financial security. The name Zeus virus sounded mythically powerful and terrifying. The command "do not shut down" created a sense of immediate, irreversible peril. He did exactly what they wanted. He grabbed the phone. The man who answered had a calm, professional voice with a slight Indian accent. He introduced himself as Steve from Microsoft's Global Security Division. He was patient, he was reassuring. He used a cascade of technical jargon: IP address, compromise, firewall breach, malicious Trojans tunneling through your network that was designed to simultaneously sound authoritative and be completely incomprehensible to my father. "Don't worry, Arthur," Steve said, using his first name with the practiced familiarity. "We've caught it just in time. We just need to run a diagnostic and purge the foreign entities from your system. I can walk you through it." For the next 2 hours, my dad was a puppet. He followed Steve's instructions to download a remote access program, allowing a complete stranger to take control of the machine that held his entire digital life. He watched, mesmerized and horrified, as his own cursor moved across the screen, opening black command prompt windows filled with scrolling green text. Steve provided a running commentary, pointing out the infections and foreign IP addresses that were, of course, nothing more than standard system files and processes. It was a masterclass in technological gaslighting. Finally, the performance reached its climax. "Okay, Arthur, the good news is we can clean this," Steve announced, his voice grave. "The bad news is that the virus has corrupted your Microsoft software license. To disinfect the system and install an advanced firewall, you'll need to purchase a new 5-year security license. Because of the severity of the breach, it needs to be processed through a third-party vendor." My father, a man who would debate the price of lumber for an hour at the hardware store, didn't question it. He was too deep in the manufactured crisis. "Okay, Steve, what do I do?" This was the hook. "Our regular payment systems are down for security upgrades," Steve said smoothly. "The quickest way to secure your system is to go through our retail partners. You'll need to go to a store like Target or Walmart and purchase 2 $1,000 gift cards. They can be for any brand they have at the checkout. It's just a way for us to process the payment securely." Even to a mind fogged with panic, this should have been a blaring siren, but Steve had an answer for everything. "It's a security protocol, Arthur. It prevents the hackers from tracing the transaction back to your bank account. Once you give me the numbers on the back of the cards, we can convert it into a payment for the software license. You'll even get a receipt emailed to you." So my dad, the proud engineer, a pillar of his community, got in his car and drove to the local Target. He, a man who hadn't bought a gift card in his life, stood in line and purchased $2,000 worth of plastic rectangles. The teenage cashier barely looked up. He drove home, his heart still pounding, and read the 16-digit codes to Steve, the calm, reassuring voice on the other end of the line. As soon as the last digit was read, Steve's job was done. "Excellent, Arthur. The system is now clean. The new firewall is active. You're all set." The line went dead. The remote access session ended. The pop-up was gone. My dad called me later that evening, not with panic, but with a strange, weary pride. "Had a bit of a scare today, son," he said. "Computer got a nasty virus, but I got it sorted. Cost a bit to get a new security package, but better safe than sorry." I felt a knot of dread tighten in my stomach. "What do you mean, Dad? What kind of security package?" He explained the whole story. As he spoke, the details, the pop-up, 1 to 800 number, the remote access, and finally, the gift cards stacked up into a monument of fraud. My heart sank. "Dad," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I think you've been scammed." The silence on the other end of the line was heavy and sharp. Then came the denial. No, he was from Microsoft. He showed me the virus on the screen. He was very professional. "Dad, Microsoft would never call you. They would never ask for payment in gift cards. That's not how it works." It took another hour of painful explanation. I had him read the back of the gift card packaging, which often explicitly states they are not to be used for payments over the phone. We looked up Microsoft tech support scam online, and there it was, his exact experience described in a dozen articles and victim testimonials. The realization washed over him, not like a wave, but like a slow, creeping tide of ice. The pride in his voice from an hour earlier had curdled into a thick, choking shame. He had been played for a fool. His logic, his careful, methodical approach to the world, had failed him. The money was gone, of course, vanished into the digital ether just like the Phantom Steve. The aftermath was difficult. We filed a police report, which felt like shouting into a hurricane. We contacted the bank, which could do nothing. The $2,000 was a painful but manageable loss. The real damage was to his psyche. The oak had been splintered. For weeks, he was quiet, withdrawn. He viewed his computer with suspicion, as if it were a traitor in his own home. He felt foolish. And worse, he felt old. He felt like his mind, the tool he had trusted his entire life, was betraying him. I thought we had learned our lesson. Sat him down and we had the talk. We discussed phishing emails, suspicious links, and the golden rule. No legitimate company will ever demand payment in gift cards, wire transfers, or cryptocurrency. I set up two-factor authentication on his accounts. I became the de facto administrator of his digital life. We put safeguards in place. We built a firewall, not of software, but of awareness. I thought we were safe. I was wrong. The first scam was a direct assault, a smash and grab on his fear. The second was a slow, methodical siege on his heart. 6 months later, the green shoots of his confidence were just beginning to show again. He was back in his workshop, his hands steady as he measured and cut wood for a birdhouse. He was even using the computer again, albeit cautiously, to email his sister and look up gardening tips. The shame of the tech scam had faded into a scar, a reminder to be careful. Then Isabella entered his life. It started innocuously, as these things always do. A friend request on Facebook from a woman with a warm, elegant smile. Her profile was a tapestry of a life well lived. She was, according to her page, a 68-year-old widow, an art and antiques dealer from Milan, Italy, who had lived in the US for years but was currently in Dubai for a major art exhibition. Her photos showed her in front of the Eiffel Tower, sipping wine at a picturesque cafe and holding a small cherubic child she identified as her granddaughter. She had mutual friends, a few distant acquaintances of my dad from a local Rotary Club group he'd joined online. He was lonely. My mother had been the sun in his solar system, and her passing 5 years prior had left a craterous void. He had friends, he had me, but the intimate, daily companionship was gone. He accepted the friend request. Isabella's first message was simple. "Hello, Arthur, you have a very kind face. I see we have some friends in common." It was the beginning of a relentless, masterful grooming process. Isabella was everything he was missing. She was intelligent, cultured, and she listened. She messaged him good morning, my dear Arthur, every day, and sweet dreams every night. She asked about his day, about the birdhouse he was building, about his engineering career. She shared stories of her own life, of her late husband, a man she described in terms that mirrored my dad's own character: strong, dependable, and loving. She was building a fantasy, and my dad, starved for connection, walked right into it. I noticed a change in him. He was on his phone more, a small, secret smile playing on his lips as he tapped out messages. He started mentioning my friend, Isabella. At first I was happy for him. "That's great, Dad. It's good you're making new friends." The thought of a scam didn't even cross my mind. This wasn't a panicked pop-up. This was a human connection. Their relationship escalated. They moved from Facebook Messenger to WhatsApp for more privacy. They exchanged photos. He sent her pictures of his workshop, his garden, and the family dog. She sent him more photos of her glamorous, jet-setting life. They never video chatted. Her camera was always broken, or the internet connection in Dubai was too poor for video. It was a red flag the size of a billboard. But my dad, already smitten, accepted the excuse. Her voice, when they occasionally spoke on the phone, was soft and laced with a vague European accent, but it was enough to make her real to him. She began to weave a future for them. "When this exhibition is over, Arthur, I want to come and see you." She'd write, "I want to see that garden you described so beautifully. Maybe we can cook a meal together. I am tired of living out of a suitcase. I want to find a place to feel at home again." She wasn't just selling a romance. She was selling him a second chance at the life he'd lost. He was completely hooked up then. About 2 months into their daily communication, the first problem arose. It was a minor crisis. A valuable tapestry she was selling had been held up in customs in Dubai. There was an unexpected import tax of $3,000 that needed to be paid in cash before it could be released. Her funds were tied up in the exhibition. "I am so embarrassed to ask, my dear Arthur," she wrote, her message laced with digital tears, "but I am in a terrible bind. The buyer is waiting. If you could possibly lend me the money, I can pay you back double as soon as the sale is complete next week. I would be forever in your debt." My dad, the man who was cheated out of $2,000 by a fake Microsoft employee, didn't hesitate. This wasn't a stranger. This was Isabella. He was helping the woman he was falling in love with. He went to his bank and wired $3,000 to an account number. She provided an account not in Dubai, but in a different state in the US, belonging to a shipping agent. A week later, the tapestry was sold, but another crisis emerged. The payment from the buyer was a cashier's check, and due to international banking laws, it would take weeks to clear. In the meantime, her hotel bill was due, and her granddaughter, back in Italy, had fallen and broken her arm, requiring emergency surgery that her daughter couldn't afford. The requests became more frequent, the stories more elaborate and heart-wrenching. Each one was a perfectly crafted emotional snare, designed to make saying no feel like an act of cruelty. He sent another $5,000 for the surgery, then $10,000 for a lawyer to expedite the check clearing process. The money was always sent via wire transfer to different accounts in different names. The network of agents and colleagues, a deliberate tactic to obfuscate the trail. I was oblivious. I live an hour away and was busy with my own job and family. I saw him every couple of weeks, and while he seemed a bit more distracted, I chalked it up to his new friendship. The secrecy of the romance scam is one of its most powerful weapons. Victims are often coached by the scammers to keep their relationship and its financial transactions private, framing it as our special secret and warning them that jealous family members won't understand. The dam broke in late October. I had come over to help him with some yard work. While looking for a pair of work gloves in his study, I knocked over a pile of papers on his desk. Underneath them was a receipt from his bank. It was for a wire transfer. The amount was $15,000. The recipient was a name I didn't recognize in a city I'd never heard him mention. "Dad," I said, holding the paper. My voice trembled slightly. "What is this?" He snatched the receipt from my hand, his face flushing with a mixture of anger and panic. "That's private. $15,000. Dad, to who? What is going on?" The story came tumbling out, but not as a confession. He told it as a defense. He was helping Isabella, a wonderful woman who had fallen on hard times. He was investing in their future. He spoke of her with a fierce, protective passion. He showed me her picture, the same elegant woman with the warm smile. He was in love. My blood ran cold. I knew, with a certainty that felt like a physical blow, what was happening. This was so much worse than the tech support scam. That was a con. This was a vivisection of the soul. "Dad, she's not real," I said, the words tasting like poison. "Don't you say that," he roared, with a fury I hadn't seen in him since I was a teenager. "You don't know her. You're just jealous that I've found someone, that I'm happy again." The argument that followed was the worst of our lives. I was desperate and harsh. He was defensive and deeply wounded. I tried to point out the inconsistencies, the broken webcam, the constant crises, the endless need for money. To him, these weren't red flags. They were tribulations they were enduring together. My skepticism wasn't helpful. It was an attack on the most hopeful thing that had happened to him in years. I went home that night, defeated, my mind racing. I had to prove it to him. I saved the picture of Isabella from his phone and ran it through a reverse image search. The results came back in seconds. The woman with the warm smile wasn't an Italian art dealer named Isabella Choas, a semi-famous Brazilian lifestyle blogger. Her photos had been stolen and repurposed by scammers all over the world. There were articles, warnings, and posts from other victims who had fallen for the same face. The same stories. The next day, I drove back to my dad's house, my stomach in knots. I didn't yell. I sat down with him at the kitchen table, the one where my mother used to help me with my homework, and I gently laid out the evidence on my laptop. I showed him the blogger's real Instagram page, filled with photos of her actual husband and family. I showed him the fraudulent websites where Isabella's photos were plastered next to warnings about romance scams. I showed him testimonials from other men and women who had lost their life savings to a person who never existed. He stared at the screen, his face ashen. He scrolled through the photos, his finger tracing the face of the woman he thought he loved, now revealed as a complete stranger. He didn't say a word. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. He wasn't just looking at evidence of a scam. He was watching the entire future he had built in his mind for the past 4 months crumble into digital dust. The love, the companionship, the hope, all of it. A lie. He slowly pushed the laptop away and covered his face with his hands. A sound came from him, a low guttural sob of such profound heartbreak and humiliation that it felt like the house itself was groaning in pain. The proud oak was not just splintered, it was felled. We went through his bank statements. The $3,000 had become $5,000, then $10,000, then $15,000. In total, over 4 months, he had wired nearly $85,000 to the syndicate of criminals behind Isabella. It was a staggering portion of his retirement savings, the nest egg he and my mother had so carefully built. It was all gone. The months that followed were a long, dark winter for his soul. The financial loss was devastating, but the emotional betrayal was a cancer. He was consumed by a shame so deep it was almost physical. He barely ate. He stopped. Going to his workshop, the birdhouse sat unfinished on his bench, a monument to a time before his world caved in. He wasn't just mourning the loss of his money, he was mourning the death of Isabella, a person who had never even been alive. And he was mourning the loss of his own judgment, his own identity as a competent, logical man. Recovery was not a straight line. It was a slow, painful crawl out of a very deep hole. There were days of rage, days of crushing depression, and days of vacant apathy. My role shifted from a son to a caregiver, a financial advisor, and a grief counselor. We didn't talk about the scam anymore. We talked about the betrayal. We focused not on the money, but on the manipulation. Slowly, painstakingly, we began to rebuild. I took over his finances completely, a move that he, in his pre-scam life, would have seen as an unbearable stripping of his independence. Now, he accepted it with a weary relief. We found a support group for victims of financial fraud, a place where he could hear stories that mirrored his own. Sitting in a circle with other intelligent, successful people, doctors, teachers, business owners who had also been deceived, was the first real step toward him forgiving himself. He learned he wasn't stupid, he was human. His loneliness and his capacity for love had been weaponized against him. It's been over a year since the Isabella scam was uncovered. The oak is not what it once was. It bears the deep scars of its felling. My father is quieter now, more cautious. A piece of his fundamental trust in the world is gone forever, but he is not broken. He finished the birdhouse. He started volunteering at the local senior center, not talking about his own experience directly, but helping to run seminars on online safety. He found a new purpose, not in blueprints and bridges, but in helping to build a wall of defense. For others, our relationship, forged in the crucible of this crisis, is deeper and more honest than it has ever been. His story is a brutal testament to the sophistication and cruelty of modern scams. They are not just about tricking the foolish. They are about exploiting the most fundamental human emotions, fear, and the desperate, beautiful, and sometimes devastating need to love and be loved. We share these stories to prevent them from happening to someone you love. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the Elder Scam Stories channel. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from, so we can see how far our message of awareness is reaching.